In this house, gold drips from the walls, but trust, it's worth more than the fortune inside. 6 days. That's all they thought she had left. In a mansion worth billions, every smile hid a knife. And tonight, someone would strike first. They thought she was dying. In hushed corners of the city, the whispers had already taken shape, not as rumor, but as certainty, that in a matter of days, her empire, her name, her legacy would slip into other hands. The vultures had begun their slow, careful circles. But Madame Emily Audley was not dying. She was watching. From behind the velvet drapes of her upstairs window, her eyes, sharp, unyielding, calculating, missed nothing. Every whisper, every shifting glance, every restless hand itching to snatch what she had built with a lifetime of grit, sacrifice, and blood. In this house, betrayal was never a question of if, only a matter of who would dare first. Her frail smile was a mask, delicate as lace but stronger than iron. Her silence was a trap, a wide gaping net waiting for the first fool to step forward. And it all began with an invitation no one could refuse. The Audley mansion rose like a palace against the Lagos skyline, its marble pillars gleaming in the morning sun, the kind of gleam that blinded, that forced you to look, even if you hated what you saw. The gold-tipped gates swung open with a slow, deliberate groan of something ancient, something that had seen too many arrivals and too many departures. It was not the sound of welcome. It was the sound of warning. Beyond the gates, the driveway stretched like a ribbon of black silk, winding through gardens so precise, so impossibly perfect, they looked as if the very leaves had signed a contract to remain in place. The air was thick with the scent of lilies, of freshly polished wood, and something else, something darker, something waiting. Inside the mansion, preparations were quiet but calculated. Servants moved like shadows, their faces unreadable, their footsteps swallowed by thick Persian rugs. Crystal glasses were polished until they sang with a faint, almost imperceptible ring. Every chair in the grand hall was positioned with military precision, every silver tray aligned so perfectly. It felt more like a ritual than housekeeping, because today the players would arrive, one by one. The first engine purred at the gates. A sleek black Mercedes rolled in, paint gleaming like liquid midnight. Then another, a silver Bentley, its tires whispering against the driveway stones. Each arrival was a statement, a declaration of wealth, of belonging, of silent rivalry. And with every arrival, the air grew heavier. Perfect grins hid ancient grudges. Polished exteriors disguised cracks no one dared speak of in daylight. For the guests, today was a farewell, a performance staged for a woman they believed had no more than a week left. But for Emily, today was the first move in a game none of them knew they were already playing. Upstairs, she sat in her armchair, wrapped in a shawl that looked soft enough to sleep in, though its weight was deliberate. Her breathing was slow, too slow, the kind of rhythm that made observers think she was fading. She let them think that. From her vantage point, she saw everything. The way one cousin's laugh landed too quickly, too loudly. The way Anice's eyes darted from one shadow to another, never settling. The faint tilt of a man's head as he whispered to another, their lips barely moving. Emily's eyes didn't just watch. They recorded, stored, measured. The game had begun long before the first champagne glass was lifted. The marble floors of the main hall reflected the gold leaf ceiling above, casting a warm, deceptive glow on the gathering below. The ancestors, frozen in oil-painted portraits, seemed to stare down with heavy, unblinking judgment. No one sat too close to another. Every champagne glass, every velvet cushion, every measured smile was a potential weapon. A small glittering piece on a chessboard where the stakes were life, death, and legacy. In the corner, two men leaned close. "Soon," one whispered. The other smirked, eyes glinting like polished knives. They thought no one heard them. They were wrong. Upstairs, Emily's lips curved, not in joy, but in recognition. The first move had been made, and soon she would make hers. Outside the window, another engine rolled in. Plain, unremarkable, but the woman who stepped out would change the course of everything. Keep watching. The story is only just beginning. You won't want to miss what happens next. Her name was Olivia. The orderly mansion no longer felt like a home. It pulsed, thrummed, as though the marble and gold themselves sensed what was coming. The walls held their breath. The chandeliers burned too brightly, as though desperate to expose the truths no one dared say aloud. Downstairs, the grand hall was a theater. Every movement was staged. The tilt of a glass, the rustle of silk, the polite curve of lips that never reached the eyes. Yet beneath the glitter and the perfume, the air was jagged, sharp enough to draw blood. Guests circled one another like predators dressed in finery. Cousins avoided cousins. Uncles pretended not to see the nephews whose fortunes depended on their ruin. Our niece's laughter rang out, too shrill, too long. It clattered like broken glass before dissolving into whispers. At the far end of the hall, two brothers leaned shoulder to shoulder, speaking in tones just above silence. Their words carried the weight of promise or threat. "Patience," one muttered. "Not patience," the other corrected. "Timing." The string quartet's bow struck a darker note, one that seemed to vibrate inside the bones of the room. Servants moved soundlessly, the clink of crystal muffled, the silver trays balanced like offerings to some restless god. Above it all, Emily watched. Her shawl cocooned her like armor, her eyes sweeping across the hall with a precision no chandelier could rival. She saw the cousins' restless fingers tapping against glass, the aunt's darting eyes, the weight of unspoken alliances forming like storm clouds. But then, the storm shifted. The gates outside moaned open once more. No polished Mercedes, no gleaming Bentley. A modest sedan, its paint dulled, its tires carrying the hush of something unassuming. When the door opened, emerald fabric sliced the air like lightning. Olivia stepped out. She did not arrive like the others. Dripping wealth, demanding notice. Her presence was quieter, heavier, like the promise of rain before thunder. Heads turned too quickly, then turned away, as though her very existence demanded recalibration. Olivia was not family, but she was trusted, and that trust unsettled them all. As she crossed the marble floors, whispers bloomed like cracks in stone. Some spoke her name with disdain, others with unease, but all with recognition. For Olivia did not walk as a guest. She walked as though she belonged. And upstairs, Emily's lips curved into a smile that was not fragile, not fading. It was the smile of someone who had just placed her most important piece on the board. The storm had gathered, and now it would break. They ushered Olivia down the marble artery of the house, the way a body carries a secret, quietly, efficiently, pretending nothing has changed. At the far end, the door to Madame Emily's private sitting room stood slightly ajar, a slice of warm light cutting into the corridor like a promise and a threat together. The servant who had walked her there bowed and withdrew. The whispers that had trailed Olivia from the foyer thinned, then dissolved into the hush that always surrounds a sick room. Except this was not a sick room, and the woman inside was not what she seemed. The room smelled of jasmine and old books. Velvet drapes filtered the sun into honeyed bands that lay across the carpet like calm rivers. A tea service glimmered on a low table, porcelain thin as breath, a kettle that murmured to itself, 2 cups waiting like witnesses. And in the high-backed chair, shawl drawn to her collarbones, eyes bright as newly sharpened knives, sat Madame Emily Odili. "Close the door, child," she said, and even her softness sounded like command. Olivia obeyed. The latch clicked, and the mansion's noise, polite laughter, clinking glass, shoes whispering along hallways, fell behind the wood. She did not bother with pleasantries. She had never been good at veils. She moved to the table, steadied her hands, and poured. The tea steam rose between them and curled like a secret trying to take shape. "You didn't have to serve me," Emily murmured, voice low enough to force listening. "I wanted to," Olivia said, and it was true. Service, in her mouth, was not subservience. It was a way to steady the world. Set the cup here, align the saucer there, bring a little order into rooms where people inhaled chaos for sport. Emily's gaze flicked to the door, a quick, glinting thing. She listened, the way a hunter listens for grass bending under a wrong footstep. Then the older woman's eyes slid back and held Olivia's with that calm that makes truth choose its words more carefully. "Then remember this," Emily said, each syllable measured. "Trust no one in this house." The sentence did not shock Olivia. It landed instead like a key, falling onto a table you'd searched for with your eyes closed. She had expected a warning. She had not expected it to be so naked. "Not even me," Emily added, and something like a smile ghosted the corner of her mouth. The kind of smile a teacher wears when a student has just solved a riddle and doesn't know it yet. A soft tread paused outside the door. Both women listened. The tread faded. The kettle sighed. Olivia wrapped her fingers around her cup and did not drink. Emily lifted hers once, then set it down again. Tea could be a bridge. It could also be a test. "They are circling," Olivia said. It was not a question. "Like kites that mistake their own shadow for prey," Emily replied. "Kites don't love the wind. They love what the wind brings closer." She eased back against the chair, the shawl sliding a little, revealing a collarbone mapped by time. "They think I will sign before Friday," Emily said, letting the words lie between them like bait. "They think I have no choice." Olivia did not blink. "Will you?" Emily looked almost amused. "Child, I have signed nothing in my life without choosing the pen first." Silence lengthened. Not the awkward kind, the kind you can stand on. Between them, the tea sent up its little white clouds, somewhere outside, far away, and yet intimately near. Glass met glass in the way of celebrations that weren't about joy. Olivia set her cup down without sipping. "The envelope," she said, "in the library." "You saw it," Emily replied. Her eyes warmed a few degrees, which in that face was akin to a hand on the shoulder. "Good. Seeing is a muscle. In this family, people let it atrophy, and then they call blindness love." Olivia hesitated. Her voice, when it came, wore its plainest dress. "Why did you invite them? If you know what gathers when people smell the end of a story." Emily's laugh was soft and unpretty. "Sometimes you must salt the earth to see what refuses to grow. Invitations loosen tongues better than interrogations. If you want to learn a person, give them a stage, not a question." She paused, head tilting as if listening to memory. "Besides, farewell brings out the truth in people. They think endings excuse their appetites." Olivia's mouth formed a line you could measure with a ruler. "And me? Why did you ask me to come?" The older woman held the younger's gaze long enough for the room to feel smaller. "Because loyalty is loud from a distance and quiet up close. I need quiet." She looked down at the tea and with a small decisive gesture pushed her cup an inch away. "And because a thing about to be stolen deserves one watcher who loves it for itself." Olivia swallowed the heat that rose in her throat. Love was a word that people in this house used like perfume, liberally, for effect, until no one could smell the truth beneath. Coming from Emily, it registered as something rarer, almost embarrassing in its sincerity. She shifted her weight, as though the floor had tilted. "I found something," Olivia said softly. Emily's eyes moved, only her eyes. "A flash drive, under the rug in the south parlor." "Good," Emily replied in the same tone one uses to approve of a child who has finally learned to look both ways. "Don't plug it into anything you own. Don't ask who dropped it. Secrets are like oil. You can smell them long after you've washed your hands." Olivia nodded. "You have cameras," she said, and for the first time there was a hint of reproach, not for the surveillance itself, but for the necessity of it. "How long have you been watching. Long enough to know who rehearses tears, Emily said, and the line tasted of salt. And long enough to know who wipes them when no one is looking. Something loosened in Olivia's chest. She hadn't come for praise, but she recognized the currency of being seen. In this house, it seldom circulated without strings attached. "You're not dying," Olivia said. It was the first time anyone had said the sentence out loud where it could hear itself properly. The words did not echo, they settled. Emily's eyes held that edged humor again. "Death is a poor audience for performances," she said. "I thought I should live long enough to watch the last act." Olivia's hand tightened on the porcelain. "They will act sooner than they think is decent," she warned. "I heard it in the garage and in the kitchen. Sound sanitizes itself when it moves through money, but it's the same filth underneath." Emily angled her head. "And you? What will you do when the curtain lifts?" There it was. The question with its sleeves rolled up. For a moment, the younger woman saw herself reflected in the kettle's curve. Small, dark, slightly distorted, made important by proximity. If she spoke incorrectly now, she felt, the room would tilt and drop her into one of those velvet shadows that pretends to catch you and does not. "I will stand where I have always stood," Olivia said, "close enough to catch what falls, far enough to see who pushed." The corner of Emily's mouth honored the answer. "I invited a snake charmer once," she said unexpectedly, "not to charm my enemies, to remind myself that some dangers must be watched and not handled." She nodded toward the door. "Out there, they think my body is the weak thing. They are wrong. The weak thing is their appetite." They both looked at the tea again. 2 untouched moons cooling in their little saucers. Olivia had never understood why certain ceremonies outlived their meanings. Today she understood. The point was not to drink. The point was to measure distance, the space between courtesy and conspiracy. A sound broke the room's serenity, a paper sliding under the door. Neither woman startled. Emily inclined her head. Olivia rose and retrieved it. The envelope was thin, cheap, the kind you buy at a roadside stall when you want people to believe you are nobody. "Read," Emily said. Olivia opened it. 1 line, block letters. "They will make their move tonight." "Who?" Olivia asked, though the question was not always asked for an answer. Sometimes it was offered so the room could hear its own danger aloud. Emily lifted her shoulders. The smallest shrug, elegant as a sash. When people say they mean we if it works and he if it fails. She nodded at the paper. "It doesn't matter. Tonight matters." In the silence that followed, the house seemed to draw closer, as if listening at all its own doors. A laugh in the corridor rose and broke like glass. Someone praised the caterer. Somewhere deep, a drawer slid, a hinge sighed. Olivia felt the map of the mansion overlaying itself on her, each corridor a vein, each door a valve. "There is something I must show you before the evening," Emily said, and for the first time her voice lost its lacquer. "Not proof. Proof is for unbelievers. A reminder." She reached for the shawl, and Olivia moved automatically to steady her. Emily did not wave her off. They stood together, the older woman lighter than she looked, her bones arranged with deliberate care, as if she'd chosen each one to tell a story about endurance. When she straightened, the room adjusted around her. Frailty here was theater, with better costume design than most. They crossed to a narrow armoire tucked between bookshelves. Emily touched the carved brass once, habit, superstition, or farewell, and opened it. Inside, not dresses, not the expected archive of a great woman's silk. Rows of small black squares stared back. Cameras, recorders, some older than others, some with the faint scratches of hard years. Eyes, Emily said simply, not for court, for conscience. She reached to the top shelf, drew down a velvet box, and set it on the table, where the tea had failed to do its work. The box's hinge gave that quiet, intimate sigh that old things make when you ask them to live again. Inside lay a tiny player, the kind designed to be forgotten in a pocket. Beside it, a memory card with a red dot painted on it by hand. Cheap paint, careful circle. "Play it," Emily said. Olivia did. The speaker crackled, then found its voice, the garage by the echo. Men breathing too hard for honesty, a voice she recognized but could not yet place. "She won't last another week." Another voice, smooth. "Then we move now." A heel on concrete. Silence. A breath that carried the size of a man's fear. Olivia paused the audio. She did not need more. The proof was not the words. It was the fact that the words existed where truth pretends to be private. "Why me?" she asked, not to be flattered, but because acceptance requires understanding if it isn't to rot into resentment later. "Why not your sons, your husband? Blood is supposed to know blood." "Blood knows itself," Emily said. "It rarely knows the truth." She picked up the little player, turned it in her hand like a river stone, then set it down again. "My sons learned my signature before they learned my story. You learned the story first." Olivia let herself breathe out. "Then teach me the ending," she said, and smiled at her own insolence. Emily's answering smile had teeth. "No, that is the mercy I will not give you. You will earn the ending as I did." From the hallway, a cluster of footsteps gathered, then dispersed. Someone knocked at the far end of the corridor, polite as a warning. Emily closed the velvet box with a soft finality and returned it to the armoire. "Tonight," she said, "they will choose whether to be who they pretend to be. I will choose too." "And me?" Olivia asked. "You will witness," Emily replied. "And if necessary, you will decide." It wasn't the words that shivered through Olivia. It was the grammar. Witness first, decide only after. A moral order disguised as an instruction. Emily touched Olivia's sleeve. "Brief, grounding. Go," she said. "Let them see you pass as if you are passing time. People hide best when they think they are being watched by someone who doesn't know what to look for." Olivia inclined her head. At the door she paused, one hand on the latch, the other still cold from touching evidence. "Madam?" she said. "Yes?" "If no one can be trusted, what do I do with hope?" Emily considered. Guard it the way you guard flame in wind, she said. High enough to see, low enough not to be seen. Olivia stepped into the corridor. The mansion inhaled her and returned to its theater. Laughter found itself. Clink, met, clink. Perfume overtook the honest smells of tea and tape and fear. She walked, unhurried, and the house watched her as if learning a new language. Behind her, inside the sitting room, Emily sat again. She did not touch the tea. She closed her eyes, not to rest, but to sharpen. Somewhere in the east wing, a clock marked a minute that would never repeat. Somewhere in the west, a lock turned without apology. And under every sound, like a bass note only the honest can hear, the night began. By nightfall, one file will disappear. One door will refuse to open. One voice will name a price no legacy should bear. The storm isn't coming. It's already here. This is not the end. It's only the beginning. The story continues. Keep watching. More unforgettable tales await on African Tales by Nina.